you a message that I have called 5 Signs of Demonic Possession. 5 signs of demonic possession. There's different beliefs that people have about demonic power and demonic activity. There are those that don't believe in demonic spirits at all. They're unbelievers in the supernatural. There are then others who believe that everything is a spirit, and really both of those are extremes on opposite ends. I believe that there are individuals around the world that are demonized, and that's a word that means controlled by an evil spirit. Now, I believe that there are many that are oppressed of demons, but they're not possessed by demons. I believe there's others that are vexed by spirits. There's others that have spirits of sickness, but they're not necessarily possessed to the point of not being able to control their life or control the things that they do. They just simply are oppressed by spirits. But today we want to talk about demonic possession. First of all, we have to understand the realm of the supernatural, the realm of spirits. Let me give you some scriptures from the New Testament and the words used to describe spirits and what those spirits mean biblically. Take a look at the screen and we'll share these with you. Mark chapter 9:25 talks about foul spirits, and this word means an impure spirit morally or spiritually. Matthew chapter 10 and verse 1 talks about an unclean spirit, and that is actually the same Greek word used for foul spirit. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and 7 talks about a spirit of fear. Now, the Greek word for fear there is a spirit of intimidation. That's what it means. In 1 Timothy 4 and 1, it talks about seducing spirits. And that word seducing in the New Testament Greek means an impostor or someone that misleads. It's a spirit that misleads people and pulls them away from the truth. In Luke chapter 13 and verse 11, there's a spirit of infirmity. A spirit of infirmity is a spirit of weakness, feebleness, or even sickness. In Acts 16:16, there's a spirit of divination. That Greek word is puthon, from where we get the word python. It was a spirit of python, and this was the same type of spirit that today works through psychics and individuals that believe in that type of thing. Then we have the spirit of bondage. Romans chapter 8 verse 15 talks about that, and it's a spirit of slavery to bring you back into the slavery of sin. Now, Romans 11 and 8 talks about a spirit of slumber. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 talks about the spirit of the world, and also 1 John 4 and 3. In fact, in 4 places in the epistle of 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, it mentions the word Antichrist, or it mentions the spirit of Antichrist there in 1 John chapter 4 and verse 3. So there's different types of spirits, or we would call them demonic powers, that are working in the earth. Now, that leads us to the next story that we're going to talk about, and that is a man in the land of Gadara, which is located in the upper area of Galilee, around the Sea of Galilee, the mountains there. And we're going to talk about a man that in Mark chapter 5 was possessed by a legion of spirits. And we're going to give you the signs of demonic possession. Now, someone may ask me, what do you mean, Perry, when you talk about demon possession? Well, first of all, I did a little word study here, and when we read in our English Bible the word possessed, for example, possessed by a spirit, the word possessed in the Greek is where we get the word demon, or to be demonized, or to be controlled by a spirit. Now, I did a little what we call history of the word from the Greek to discover demon and what it means. And one of the meanings is to divide or to distribute. In other words, it actually means that a demon tries to divide and conquer, tries to come in, and one of the words I've written down here, to cause division or to cause confusion. So anyone that is controlled by a demonic spirit will be extremely confused, extremely divided, and the enemy tries to distribute his goods, his control, his bondages, and distribute them into the life of that person once they have become confused or once they have become divided. Now, when we talk about the word possessed, the word possessed means to control. Here's the difference. A person that is vexed by a spirit, or we would say oppressed by a spirit, is someone that is pressed down. Their spirit is pressed down. Their heart is pressed down. Their heart is heavy. They have no joy, no peace. Sometimes a lot of confusion is in their heart, but they can be vexed by a spirit. When a person is possessed by a spirit, they are driven to do things that they normally would not do. They are driven to actions that they normally would not perform. They're driven to say words they normally would not say, even to people they love. So what I would like to do today is go to Mark chapter 5 and give you the 5 signs of demon possession. Now, I want to make something very clear. This is very important. And before I prepared to teach this on the Manifest program today, I really felt like the Lord dealt with me to say this, that just because You have a friend, or you may be sitting at home saying, wait a minute, that sounds like me. One or two of these signs does not necessarily mean you are possessed by spirits, because one or two of these signs could actually be brought about in your life by things you're doing or things that you're not doing, or you'll see in a moment what I'm saying. But when you have someone who has all five of these signs taking place in their life, well, it could be that they're being controlled by a spirit. Let's look at more than 800 men, and it could go up to, in some cases, 6,000 men. Now, I want you to think about a man having that many demonic spirits in him at one time. And that's why the word legion is used by the chief demon that was possessing him, because there were many demons in him. We know there were at least 2,000, because that's how many swine drowned when the evil spirits departed from the man and went into his body. Okay, let's look at some things together. Number one, the first sign this man was possessed was, first of all, he was awake day and night. The Bible tells us that night and day he was crying aloud in the tombs. Now, you crying aloud in the tombs. Now, you find that there are individuals that are so tormented that they can't sleep at night. And they stay up consistently night after night, and they go sometimes 2 and 3 days without sleeping. Sometimes it's a result of drug addiction and other problems. But the fact that the man had no rest is a sign that he was being controlled by a spirit, an evil spirit, howbeit. So in other words, the Bible tells us that God gives his beloved rest. When we rest in the Spirit, we can get a good, that's biblical. But this man was tormented day and night. Now, the second thing was this. The second sign of demon possession was he was running from those who cared the most about him. In other words, we read in the Bible that he had friends and he also had family. But he wasn't staying with his friends or family. He was fleeing from them and separating himself from people he loves. Now, that brings me to the next very important point of this message. But when you are controlled by a spirit, a demonic spirit, the last thing you want to do is run toward godly people. You don't want to run toward people who love God. You don't want to run toward people who are reading the Bible. You want to separate yourself from them. And here's the reason why. It's not you. You, by yourself, may have a desire for help. But that spirit that's controlling you does not want you to be around anyone that can help set you free and bring deliverance to you. Therefore, a lot of times, people controlled by spirits will separate themselves from people who could really help them, godly people. Here's the third sign that the man of Gadara in Mark 5 was possessed by spirits. The Bible says he was living among the tombs. Now, they discovered in the Galilee area, again, right around the Sea of Galilee, over there opposite of Tiberias in the land of the Gadarenes, they had a bulldozer one time digging a road out, and they discovered some ancient tombs, because back in that day, the tombs were basically cut into limestone, and you went down some steps and there would be niches, or they simply cut the graves in the side of the mountain. And this was the type of tombs the man was hiding in. Now, this man was living in the tombs, not with friends and family, because he was dangerous, which is another sign. He was very extremely violent. They tried to tame him and couldn't tame him. Violence can, now it not always is, sometimes it's just a bad temper people have, but violence can be a sign of demonic possession. And so this man was so violent that no one wanted him around, so he was driven into the wilderness, into the tombs. Now remember this. What is a tomb? A tomb is a place of the past. A tomb is a place of past memories. A tomb is a place that when you see it, it's a sign of dead things. A tomb is a place of sorrow. No one ever goes into a graveyard and rejoices unless you go to the garden tomb in Jerusalem where Jesus used to be. And we rejoice because he's not there, he is risen. However, you have to understand that in the case of this particular man in Mark chapter 5, he had his dwelling among things that were dead. He was comfortable around dead things. He was comfortable around lifeless things. And see, the picture I get from that for you is kind of like we'd say a metaphor or an analogy, I should say, that is a picture of people today who live in their past and live in their memories. Did you know, I want to say something to someone watching me. I feel this right now in my spirit. I'm here in Israel taping this, but someone will be watching that needs to hear this. One of the greatest things that brings people into bitterness and unforgiveness and even opens a door to spirits is rebellion that comes through broken relationships. So many times when a broken relationship happens, and it can be a husband and wife broken relationship, a boyfriend and girlfriend, a person will be so hurt by it and so grieved that they get into anger and bitterness. And what happens is the continual walking in the anger and bitterness actually opens up a door to tormenting spirits, just tormenting their mind. Then they can't sleep. Next thing, they're on medication, they're taking alcohol, trying to kill the pain, and that is not the way to handle it. That only leads you to more bondages of the enemy. So please understand this, that when this man had his dwelling among the graves and among the tombs, he was living in the memories of his past. You cannot be successful going forward if all you do every moment is think about the past and live in the past and wonder, what if this would have happened? What if that would have happened? I wonder if I would have done that different, would it have changed things? You will be tormented in your mind, unable to sleep and
Da,
unable
bun,
to
îi zice
function
vrei.
if you live in the graveyard of the past. And that's where this man was living. Now, we pointed out a moment ago that he was also violent. And you know, violence can be a sign of two things. Number one, it's just sometimes a sign of a lack of control in people's lives and they lose their temper, but it can